Caitlin Clark got disrespected on live TV, and what she did next left the entire NBA speechless. If you thought you'd seen Caitlin Clark's best response to trash talk, wait until you hear what happened in Chicago. Because this wasn't just a basketball game. This was a public execution, and Caitlin Clark was holding the weapon the entire time. Welcome to WNBA Reports, and if this is your first time here, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button right now, because we are about to break down one of the most savage, most personal, most unforgettable nights of Caitlin Clark's entire career, and trust me, you do not want to miss what we've got coming after this one either. Let's set the scene, because context is everything here. Caitlin Clark did not walk into Chicago riding high. She walked in bruised. Indiana had just dropped 2 straight games, including a genuinely ugly, no excuses beatdown against Dallas.
Can you make us from there?
The doubters were circling. The takes were flying. Was Caitlin Clark's magic wearing off? Was the league finally figuring her out? Was the sophomore slump narrative about to become real? That was the mood heading into Chicago. Caitlin Clark had something to prove, and everybody watching knew it. And then Chicago's Dejanai Carrington decided this was the perfect moment to poke the bear. After a physical exchange near the top of the floor, Carrington got called for a foul on Clark, and instead of just walking away like a normal professional, she turned it into a show. Right in front of the referee, right in front of the cameras, right in front of a hostile road crowd already smelling blood, Carrington threw up the flop gesture, essentially calling Caitlin Clark a fraud, an actress, a drama queen who goes down for sympathy calls. It was a bold move. It was a disrespectful move. And within a matter of minutes, it would go down as one of the worst decisions of Dejanai Carrington's season. Because Caitlin Clark didn't yell back. She didn't get in Carrington's face. She didn't need to. Caitlin Clark's clapback came in a language everybody in that building could understand. Buckets, dimes, and daggers from every single angle on the floor. Let's go back to the opening tip though, because the story of this game didn't start with the Carrington drama. It started with Clark quietly, methodically dismantling Chicago's defense possession by possession, long before anyone threw a single insult. Right off the tip, Clark got the ball in her hands and immediately started working. She used a screen from her teammate Timpson, and when Chicago's defense collapsed toward her, because that's what happens now, defenses collapse the second Caitlin Clark touches the ball, she slipped a pinpoint. He hadn't even reached the second media timeout. Then, Clark got one more clean look from deep, and she made Chicago pay for it again. Her second triple of the quarter, pushing her to 8 points and serving notice that whatever went wrong against Dallas, it clearly wasn't happening tonight. That's when Chicago made the substitution that would define the entire storyline of this game. They brought in Dejanai Carrington. At first, it looked routine, a normal rotation, nothing to see here. But within minutes, this substitution turned into the spark that lit the whole night on fire. Carrington picked up Clark near the top of the key, initiated contact, and got whistled for the foul. And instead of accepting the call and moving on like literally every player in league history has done 1,000 times, Carrington decided to make a statement, mocking Clark with an exaggerated flop motion. Playing to the crowd, playing to the cameras, playing right into Caitlin Clark's hands. You could see it on Clark's face. She had words, she wanted to respond. But instead of getting baited into a shouting match that would only fuel Chicago's energy, Clark chose violence of a different kind. Basketball violence. She got Carrington isolated one-on-one, created just enough separation with a nasty step back, and drilled a 3-pointer directly in her face. No words needed. The scoreboard did the talking. Chicago wasn't done trying to rattle her though. On the next possession, Carrington bumped Clark again, clearly trying to needle her into an emotional reaction. Clark's response? She basically waved her off, like she wasn't even worth the energy of a conversation anymore. And here's the part that should terrify every team left on Indiana's schedule. Clark didn't let the tension turn this into a selfish one-on-one revenge mission. She came right back down the floor, drew the defense toward herself yet again, and found Aaliyah Boston. Sorry, Damiris Dantas, actually. Let's just say she found Billings cutting hard to the rim for an easy bucket. Even in the middle of a personal, public feud, Caitlin Clark stayed locked in as a facilitator first. That's a level of poise a lot of superstars never develop. She went right back to work attacking the paint, patiently working the defender backward before softly floating a shot off the glass for 2 more. Chicago genuinely had no idea anymore whether to press up on her outside or protect the rim, and Clark exploited that confusion beautifully. Then came a moment that had the announcers nearly losing their minds. One of the most ridiculous passes of the entire NBA season so far. Clark drew multiple defenders toward her, held the ball just long enough for Timpson to find her window, and delivered a behind-the-back dime directly into her path for the easy finish. Chicago's defense didn't just get beat, they got embarrassed. Caitlin Clark was seeing plays develop before the defense even knew what was coming. Chicago tried to respond with physicality, banging on Clark down low, but that backfired spectacularly too. Clark drew a foul on Cardoso, Chicago's starting center, putting her in early foul trouble with 3 personals. Every single strategy Chicago tried was quietly blowing up in their face. Clark kept hammering the paint, floating in another bank shot off the glass, and by this point, she'd already climbed to 17 points. Remember, this is the same player some analysts were quietly questioning after the Dallas game. 17 points deep into the first half and counting. Even as the half wound down, Clark refused to slow down, attacking again, drawing another foul, calmly knocking down free throws. Proof that you can't simply run her off the three-point line and expect the problem to go away. Chicago tried. It didn't work. By halftime, the box score read 18 points and 6 assists for Caitlin Clark. And somehow, Chicago still clung to a 51-50 lead. If you were a Chicago fan in that arena, you might have actually believed you had a chance. That belief was about to be completely obliterated, because the second half is where this game stopped being competitive and started becoming a legend. Clark came out of the locker room and immediately picked up right where she left off, pulling the defense toward her before kicking it out to Hull for a wide-open 3. That was assist number 7, and more importantly, it put Indiana back in front for good. Then Clark decided enough was enough with the setup work. It was time to take over personally. She created her own space with another step back, rose up from deep, and buried it. By now, Chicago's coaching staff had to be realizing that whatever adjustments they made at halftime simply were not working, and the ripple effect was brutal for Chicago. Because once Clark starts commanding that much defensive attention, her teammates start feasting on the leftovers. Kelsey Mitchell got in on the action too, calmly sinking free throws back-to-back to stretch Indiana's lead even further. The dam had officially broken. Clark went back inside, attacking downhill, keeping the defender glued to her hip before softly dropping in another floater. This is what made her performance genuinely impossible to game plan against. You take away the 3, she beats you inside. You sag into the paint, she buries you from deep. There was no version of defending Caitlin Clark that worked on this particular night. And then came the dagger that turned a competitive game into a spectacle. Clark got a sliver of space, pulled up from 25 feet and drained a 3 to push her total to 26 points. At this point, you have to wonder if Dejanai Carrington was starting to regret that flop gesture from the first quarter. But Clark wasn't finished delivering messages. She pulled up from logo range, somewhere around 35 feet from the basket, created her own separation with yet another step back, and let it fly. It went in, 29 points. Indiana's lead ballooned to 13. This was no longer Caitlin Clark simply answering Carrington's disrespect. This was Caitlin Clark humiliating an entire franchise in front of their own home crowd. And just when you thought the drama was over, the chaos found a new outlet entirely. After a bucket from Natasha Cloud, Chicago called a timeout, and during that stoppage, Cloud got into a heated, visible exchange with a fan sitting courtside. Arena security had to step in and physically remove the fan from the building. A night that started with an on-court insult had now escalated into a full-blown sideshow, and Indiana simply kept their foot on the gas through all of it. Kelsey Mitchell opened the next stretch by drilling back-to-back 3s of her own. And just as Chicago started shifting attention toward containing Mitchell, Clark reminded everyone who the real problem was by burying another triple herself. Indiana's backcourt was now completely dismantling Chicago from every direction on the floor, and Clark's point total had climbed to 32. Then, because apparently scoring wasn't enough, Clark went right back to setting up her teammates, drawing the defense and finding Hines Allen cutting to the rim for an easy finish, her 9th assist of the night. Chicago had absolutely no answer, because whether Clark wanted to score or pass, the result was the same. Points on the board for Indiana. But she saved the biggest exclamation point for last. With the outcome already decided, Clark created one more step back, rose up, and buried her 8th three-pointer of the game, a new career high, pushing her final total to 37 points. And just to put a bow on the entire performance, she found Timpson for one more easy bucket, notching her 10th assist of the night. Final stat line, 37 points, 10 assists, 8 three-pointers made, a new career high in triples. Kelsey Mitchell chipped in 30 points of her own. Indiana demolished Chicago 113-90, and to make matters even worse for the Sky, this loss officially eliminated them from playoff contention. Dejanai Carrington mocked Caitlin Clark early in the game. By the final buzzer, Clark had delivered the only response that actually mattered. But here's the thing, as satisfying as the Carrington storyline is, it might not even be the biggest takeaway from this night. The real story here is what this game means for Caitlin Clark going forward. She walked into Chicago fresh off back-to-back losses, with whispers starting to grow louder that maybe the magic was fading, maybe defenses had finally solved her, maybe the Fever were slipping at the worst possible time. Instead of letting that narrative snowball, Caitlin Clark ripped it up in front of a hostile crowd on national television with a career night that silenced every single doubter in one sitting. This wasn't just a big scoring night. This felt like a full-blown redemption arc compressed into 40 minutes of basketball. A reminder that one bad stretch, even a couple of genuinely bad losses, doesn't erase what Caitlin Clark is capable of the moment she gets comfortable and lets herself play free. She looked aggressive. She looked fearless. She looked, more than anything, like herself again, the version of Caitlin Clark that made the entire basketball world stop and pay attention in the first place. And now the real question hanging over the rest of the season is simple. Was this a one-night explosion? Or is this the spark that ignites another Indiana run? Because if Caitlin Clark carries this level of confidence, this level of aggression into her next few games, the rest of the NAB is about to have a serious problem on their hands. Teams that were circling Indiana as a wounded, beatable opponent might need to rethink that strategy completely, and fast. So here's what we want to know from you. Was this Caitlin Clark's true comeback game? Was Dejanai Carrington's flop mockery the spark that lit this entire explosion? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below because we are reading every single one of them. And if you made it all the way here with us, if you rode this entire roller coaster from the disrespect to the step backs to the logo 3 to the final buzzer, do us one favor before you go. This channel is brand new, and we are building something special here, breaking down every twist, every feud, every statement game in women's basketball as it happens. So smash that subscribe button right now, hit the like button so more people can see this breakdown, and drop a comment telling us who you want us to cover next. We've got so much more coming, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. This has been NBA Reports. We'll see you in the next one.